Emily Neff, welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
I always am as well, and it's a nice day. I'm outside on my porch, and I can't wait for this conversation because we are in the middle of school and club soccer overlapping here in Florida, and you as well in PA with softball and all the other sports. So, this will be a fun topic to talk about because a lot of girls really struggle to find that balance and to make sure that they're staying healthy during this time with all these practices and games. So, you're a really great person to come on and just provide some really good insights. So, let's get into it. What are your thoughts on two teams in a single season, whether it's club and school ball of the same sport, or even if you're doing two different sports like basketball and soccer or field hockey and cross country? I think
Mhm.
it's all kind of sketchy, especially if girls aren't continuing that strength training. So, why is this not good for injuries? And what are some things we can do about it?
Yeah, so that's a really good conversation because what we have in literature is that I'm looking at a study from 2013 and another study from 2011. The one is called Youth Sport Positive and Negative Impacts of Young Athletes. It's open access. The other is sports related injuries in youth athletes. Is overscheduling a risk factor? So both come to the conclusion that you should play one sport per season and that playing multiple sports, whether it be your athlete is playing soccer and then lacrosse or so be it. That's beneficial because it helps expose her to different movement patterns. However, only one sport should be reserved per season to prevent overtraining. Second to that is that if your athlete is also playing the same sport and club, so the same club, same sport, so soccer, school, and then club soccer, should limit her total sport participation to only 2 total sports per year, meaning that she should play soccer, club soccer, and only one other sport, such as lacrosse. However, they should never be done in the same season because it's too much stress. This is where I think a lot of people get confused. There was a big conversations we used to talk about us growing up and even like 10 years ago on multi-sport athletes are these athletes that don't have as much severe injuries, which is so true. But unfortunately, when we consider multi-sport athletes, we're supposed to consider that they're still playing just one sport per season. Now, I think that asking athletes to do this right now, considering what youth sport culture is probably going to be impossible. So our job instead is to help give them ways of how do you manage this because every single right now for us soccer school season isn't until the fall and club season is right now, so I don't see that overlap, but I do see a lot of overlap for my softball players whose spring school season starts up in the spring and then they also are still playing club on the side, and I see a lot of issues with understanding how do you manage this because it's so much, but also how to manage the most important part, and that's maintaining their athletic development through strength training. So I have found a lot of parents misunderstand and think that they can't lift on the same day that they're doing a sport practice or a game. And instead, what I hear is that an athlete might have, pitching lessons or skill sessions, and then from that go into, sport practice. And I need to remind them that that's the same movement pattern back to back. So that's something that you actually don't want to do because you just practice pitching for an hour. And now she's going to go to practice where she's going to pitch some more. And now maybe you're saying, yeah, but practice isn't as intense, but it's still the same movement pattern. And that's a lot in one day. Now, if she has a program where someone is programming her in terms of the weight room, it's really beneficial to do strength training and practice or strength training and skill session in the same day because a smart coach is looking at the amount of sport volume that she's doing and programming specific movement patterns to balance the movements that she's seeing primarily in her sport. This is how we can reduce the chance of injuries. Plus, this is her preseason period, right? We're getting ready for season. You don't want to drop strength training right now because that's going to peak your athlete too soon. And that means by the end of her season, she's at the lowest physical capacity possible. And that's when you see a big increase in injuries because she stopped lifting in her preseason and just did too much sport or the same movement pattern. So I have found that it comes down to kind of creating an analogy for them. So I had an athlete, a softball athlete, who ended up doing 5 hours of pitching. Just like she had a skills practice, and she had sports practice through club, and she like tweaked her shoulder. It just like felt weird. And they called and they're like, "Hey, we don't think we're gonna come into a lift. We're gonna relax the shoulder." So we chatted with them, like, "Hey, what's going on?" Well, one, we still want to come in because we want to work the rest of your body. There's this thing called the crossover effect where if I train your, uninjured arm, that's actually going to help promote blood flow and healing to the injured arm. But let's like come in and take a look at it. You still got a lower body, still got a core. Looking at it, we are like, all right, let's see what movements affect this and let's stay away from those movements. So really it was just the wind up movement of a pitch that affected that feeling. So we're like, okay, great. We're going to avoid that movement pattern. There was very minimal things we had to change. And my conversation with my parent was, so for this upcoming week, she had a really big showcase and she was like, what should we do? And I said, well, let's consider this. Pretend your athlete is a marathon runner and she has a big marathon this weekend. Are you going to run extra miles this week? No, right? You're going to taper. You're going to drop down the amount of mileage that you're doing. So let's consider the same thing for this athlete. So I'm looking at her schedule and it looks like she has 3 club/school practices plus 2 skills training sessions. And you're thinking about skipping lifting. Well, lifting is her cross training. A marathon runner wouldn't skip her cross training. She's going to down regulate the thing that she's about to do that weekend. So for her, I say, take a look at what's most important. If you really want her to do this skills practice, keep it earlier in the week away from when this big tournament is. And let's start to drop a practice or two because we don't need all this additional practice. The work has already been done. We need to get her primed and ready to go by this weekend. So I find that making that analogy was really helpful for her because she had that tournament. She did fantastic, felt great. That next weekend, she took the whole weekend off from playing sports and it was great. She doesn't have any pain anymore. So I think that just trying to simplify it for them makes sense. I've also found that if you're talking to a parent who doesn't necessarily lift weights themselves, their perspective of what lifting weights is sore. And of course it is because they've never done it before. And when you do something new, you get sore. But these are athletes, and this is not. It's different. They're not just working out to burn calories. We're here to get stronger and reduce the chance of injury. So I think helping them understand, like, I understand why you think that it would be beneficial to stop strength training because that's your relationship with strength training. Here's why it's not. Create that analogy. Everyone knows what a marathon runner is. Like, consider that. Would she run more or would she stop cross training that week? Absolutely not. She would stop running as much. She would start to taper down and she would keep her cross training up to help make sure she doesn't get injured. And then she's going to have a great marathon time. And I think that analogy is what we can really use with our parents and athletes to get this point across of how to manage all of these demands for our athletes because it's so important.
It's funny when you present the marathon analogy, load management makes so much sense to everyone all of a sudden, but it's so
Mhm.
true and it's so helpful putting things into perspective. I really like what you said about the skills training, how if an athlete is in season and they're playing on 2 teams in a season, it's probably not the best idea to add more skills training and that same sport specific work on top of all that because at that point her muscles are just in a continuous catabolic state and they're always breaking down, they're always damaged, and there's really no time for repair and building them up. Now, I have a question about the strength training. I kind of go back and forth on this one, but if an athlete's playing on 2 teams in a season and they're coming in even just one time a week for strength, is that even enough? And are we getting a lot of use out of that session when their muscles are so tired from everything else? Like, I struggle with this one because it is kind of nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because is one time in general enough for anything in your life? What can you do one time a week and get better at? Not much. But one time is way better than nothing because when it comes down to, again, what research says is that if as long as female athletes spend at least 6 months a year performing 2 times a week of strength training, she can then maintain that strength over the next 6 months if she's just doing 1 time a week strength training. So, are we moving the needle forward? Not much, but we're not getting worse. We're not going back to, the baseline of where she was before she started lifting. So, is it, when it comes down to the question, is this still too much for my athlete though? Because she's so sore, she's so tired. Well, again, a good program takes that into consideration. And the program that she's doing when her sport volume is so high is extremely complementary in that volume of her movement patterns are low. The movements that she's doing are complementary to the movements that she's doing in her sport, and intensity stays high so that she's able to be powerful. And by keeping volume low, we're actually helping promote blood flow to her body, which will help loosen her up while decreasing any chance for soreness. The issue arises if your athlete just doesn't continue a routine of strength training. So let's say she's, you know, comes in once, skips 3 weeks, comes in once again. Well, a 3 week break, lifting is now novel or new to her body. So she's going to be sore because your body gets sore from either high volume or novelty. So the most important thing is to continue with at least 1 time a week, maintain your consistency there, and to communicate with your coaches like, hey, I had to run 1,000 sprints in my game yesterday. My hamstrings are fried. And that's when your coach is like, thanks for letting me know. Let me make sure that whatever I do that's going to be posterior chain dominant is super low in volume, is going to help improve your mobility so that you feel better and so that we relieve any tightness while also maintaining your strength so that your body can handle 12,000 more sprints in tomorrow's game.
I think that's really great. And I like what you said earlier about how parents have that perception of these in season lifts as making athletes so sore. So I get like why they're fearful of it. But I think to just help the listeners, it would be good to give just a sample program of what you would give an athlete in one of these workouts. I'll give one of mine just so we have some variety here. But usually like a pull up or a TRX row, and then a pistol squat or some type of lunge, and then a single leg deadlift for the hamstrings, and then either a core or a press, and really just hit each muscle group. And including the warm up, that usually takes 30 to 45 minutes, and they
Mhm.
get that blood flowing. And it could also count as a recovery workout too, since the
Mhm.
volume's so low. And mentally, it gives them a great break. And it's just something new. It's just something different than all the soccer or whatever sport you got going on. So what are some things that you're doing with your athletes, or just like a sample workout?
Yeah. So let's say I have a soccer athlete right now, and she's in a super high. We do have so many soccer athletes that are in their high EDP, tournament season. So if they're coming in, again, they should only be in for about 45 minutes. We're going to do a warm up. They're probably going to do some type of power movement on the platform. The intensity will be depending on how fast the bar is moving. So if it's going to be a recovery day or an actual power day. So they're probably going to be off the blocks doing some type of power clean or power snatch. Again, this is depending on the level of this athlete. Then she's probably going to do some type of maybe like a trap bar jump just to get her power output high. Then all she's going to do after that is probably some type of set of 3 maybe pause squat where she's just going to pause for the first rep only and be super speedy after. Some type of vertical press, maybe like a push press so that we're getting our core engagement as well. And then some type of maybe like a Nordic hamstring, again, keeping reps from 3 to 5, some type of horizontal pull. Maybe she'll do like a chest supported bent over row to limit any eccentric loading. And then depending on the athlete, sometimes I actually like to decrease the amount of unilateral loading I'm doing because if she's doing so much in her sport, I want to actually emphasize bilateral loading. Maybe this athlete has a history of shin splints, so I'm gonna finish with some, like, anterior tib raises just to get a little bit more loading on that muscle, and then I'm sending her home, and I'm gonna make sure that she comes in and she's leaving with a happier disposition than she came in with. That's really the most important aspect so that she gets that mental break and she's feeling good, she's feeling loose, and she's ready to go tackle whatever her next game is.
I love that, and that definitely sounds like a nice warm up almost on the day of a practice for a girl, and just to let everyone know, like, 3 to 5 reps, that's not enough to get an athlete sore, so if your daughter is sore during the season, don't blame it on the weights, it's probably from all of the change of direction and high speed running happening within practices or the number of the 500 throws that they're doing. 3 reps is so meager, even
Got it.
5
Yeah.
reps, so yeah, just putting that out there for everyone, you're not going to get sore from that.
No.
Now, one last question I have, and I think this is really important for our girls, is they have to really advocate for themselves. And I believe that a good coach understands that you have to lean towards one team or one type of training during this time, and you can't be doing it all. So, as an example, I have a girl right now who's it's go time for middle school soccer, and she's committing just to that and to my strength and speed training. And she told her club coach, "Hey, I'm going to take a break for the next 6 weeks while my school soccer is in session, but I'll be back. But just letting you know, I'm like working with Erica and really like staying in shape." And he was like, "Oh, that's no problem at all. Like,
Mhm.
go have fun." And I thought that was so great. And she's thriving right now. She's outrunning everyone. She's super twitchy still. And it's just great to see. But I don't see that many examples of that because I think girls just don't know or they just don't know how to stand up for themselves.
Mhm. I agree, and I think a lot of it is that there's a lot of parent pressure that, like, they have to do it all because, this person, this friend is doing it all too, so my daughter has to do it all. Um, and I love, like, that example because that's something that we really try to advocate for our athletes as well as teach them how to have conversations with their coaches. So, if I have an athlete right now who is a high level volleyball player, and this is like volleyball club season, but school volleyball open gyms are happening. Well, according to PIAA, you really don't need to do that at the school because it's like not legal. But I understand that the coach wants to see the interest, and that's going to obviously inevitably help understand who's going to make the team. Well, guess what? An easy way to help ensure your athlete has a better chance of making the team is teaching this coach that you can communicate because coaches love athletes that know how to communicate. So saying, "Hey coach, like I'm super excited to try out for the team this upcoming, for next fall. I hate to say that I'm not going to be able to make all of your open gyms, but right now I practice club 2 times a week and I'm lifting 2 times a week to keep my vertical high and to help reduce my injury risks. So if I'm not there, I just want to let you know it's not because I'm sitting at home, it's because I'm still doing the things that I need to help prepare my body so that I'm super strong come fall season." And if your coach hears that, they're a good coach would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. One, this athlete knows how to communicate. Two, this athlete understands that she needs to prioritize her health and playing that would be 4 practices a week of volleyball with a entire weekend tournament. It's just way too much volleyball. There's no point. What's the point? There's going to be a degradation of your skill acquisition because you can't just do more to get better. Your body gets too fatigued, especially if you're not able to maintain your muscle mass, strength, and power because you can't find time to lift weights."
I think this is going to be really helpful for everyone listening because a lot get overwhelmed with being on 2 teams, and I understand the importance of school soccer, Emily does. We were just talking off air that it's really important for our girls for socializing, and they just have a blast doing it, but understand when it is that school season, still keep strength training the best you can and have these conversations with your club coach, and like Emily said, a good coach will understand, especially if you explain it in a way as I'm trying to stay healthy and improve my performance and make sure I'm good for club season. So,
Mhm.
Emily, thank you for this. I will see everyone on the next episode.